Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
Okay. All right. Welcome to Shoot Me Straight with Dave Fields, Eddie Gallagher. We got Greg Smith with us. He's a good friend of mine. Incredible man in general. There's so many questions that I have for him, but really I'm going to start with his story and his background and where he got to today. He's raised 6 just really well-adjusted, awesome kids that are now adults, and he's got grandkids now. And he's also, at the same time, bootstrapped a software company that he took from literally nothing, wrote the code initially, and took it into a huge, successful software company that has Fortune 500 companies.
A lot of Fortune 1000s, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome guy. So I'll just start with your background, where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I was a poor farmer child. It's really interesting because I come from poor farmers, and if you've ever read Grapes of Wrath, migrant farm workers that follow crops, those are my parents.
Wow.
Raised in basic middle America, farm boy go to the city to get work type thing, my father. And solidly middle class type. But my parents were they always expected great things of their kids, and it was interesting because they had no concept of higher education. And what they saw of the world was pretty small as far as that goes. Yeah, but raised those kids, and I started out in middle suburbs. I was very, very fortunate in that formative years. I didn't do it. I did really well in school, but I didn't pay much attention in school. In fact, by the time I was in high school, I said phooey on math and science. I liked doing music and debate. I ended up getting a hold of hall monitor passes from a teacher friend of mine, so I wrote my own excuses and pretty much didn't go to class the last year of high school, which is so funny. I said, I'm going to go to law school. God gave me a good brain, so I could get really good test scores and stuff. So I went to Washington University in St. Louis, planned on being an attorney because I love to get up and talk and argue. And then first semester, I took a programming course as an elective. I loved it. I was wired to do this sort of stuff. Went to the dean of engineering. Man, I really like to be in engineering. Well, let's see. You don't have calculus. You don't have physics. You don't have chemistry. So what do I have to do to get into engineering school? I had a really bad first year because I went to class and studied, and that was it. Because I had to bootstrap stuff I should have done in high school. But I ended up getting into the engineering school, and from there, never looked back. I've had the management stuff and all that growing up but I've always absolutely loved to program computers and still do. So that's sort of the technical side of the world.
Now, did you have brother and sisters?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister. My brother-in-law is my sister's she's a really cool career. She's in some ways street smart, the smartest of my brothers and sisters. She decided quite honorably to do motherhood for quite a few years. What she does now, she helps older people that are needing to downsize and move into assisted living.
Nice.
She's done that for ages. She's really, really good at it. In fact, she was wonderful. My mother went through that this last year. She was great because my sister knew exactly what to do, especially on the psychological part of it, because that's what's hard in that. And my brother, he's an executive with, remember who? It's a small startup now. He was with Schneider for a long time. But he's trained as a computer person, but he's a really good suit, good manager. Has 4 wonderful kids. My sister has 3. All very strong family, good followers of God and stuff. They're all really good people. I see them a lot. So,
Go ahead.
What state did you grow up in?
I grew up in Missouri mostly.
Okay.
We spent some time in California.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Now, what do you attribute to your sister and brother and you growing up like so well? Like, do you think it's because your parents installed work ethic into you that they?
This sounds so trite. We always ate together. We did things together. My parents, like all parents, weren't perfect. My mom is brilliant, which my dad can fix anything, he gave me my work ethic. I was out working full time by 14, largely in the summertime. Worked on a truck farm. Was a supervisor after about 2 months too. Finding on a truck farm. But my mom is absolutely brilliant. She is a fascinating story. She got married at 15, dropped out of high school, had me when she was early 16s. Eventually went back and got her high school diploma, got a 2-year degree in finance, and she to the point she had a fairly responsible position at Edward Jones in the brokerage firm in the end. If she hadn't wanted to do as much for family, she could have made general partner there with what she did. She was a brilliant woman, still is a brilliant woman. Wow. And I'm wired like her.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you get out of high school and you immediately start programming?
Oh, I got out of high school. After a year in college, I could finally get into engineering. And, then I did the whole thing. In college, the competed nationally in computer programming stuff, did pretty well and the like. Then I wanted to go to graduate school. I didn't have any money. I worked full time all during college because my parents couldn't afford to pay everything. Lived at home 3 of the years because I couldn't afford to live anywhere else, and worked all the time. And I wanted to go to graduate school, so I did some research. I found out who had the most research money. Rich Damkohler, good friend of mine. He's deceased now. I went to Rich and said, Rich, I want a job. I said, why? Because I need money. I want to go to graduate school. So he gave me a job on the coolest projects funded by SmithKline French. They've been bought by somebody else since then, but pharmaceutical work. Mm-hmm. And I had the greatest opportunity to work with Mike Zaida and Perry and John McAllister, building computational chemistry and real high-performance graphics back when you could count the number of people that were doing it in the world on a few hands type bit. In fact, my first graphics terminal I had, it's the terminal itself was as big as these two tables. It's a pretty good size. It was about $500,000, and it required $1 million back 780 to run it.
Wow.
It was a ton of fun. I didn't know how good I had it in terms of what I was working on. But it turned into a commercial product. Was the absolute leader for many, many years in computational chemistry.
What year was this? Around what year?
About 83, 84, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. It was only interrupted by one thing, and that was my wife, Mary. I was smitten with her early on, and it was a hard one because during summer, I would call her every week to talk with her because I really liked her type bit, and got rejection for almost 6 months. I'd call her and want to talk with her. She says, why is this person calling in trying to talk to me? And eventually, the reason I'd given up with her, but a friend of mine we had some symphony tickets that year, was going to ask her out. And I said, I don't want her going out with this guy. So I tried one last time, and it took off from there like crazy. She was my last year project. So as far as that goes, yeah, we got married right when I got my graduate degree, and interesting. I went off to the best place in the world at the time, Bell Labs out in New Jersey. Wow. At the time, did Unix system research for a while.
Bell Labs back then that was like, I don't even know comparison nowadays, like MIT,
it was the best of the best at that point in time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still pretty good. So I can't say my friends there tell them it's not. Yeah, but I went there. That's when I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit, honestly, because that was my first. Well, the early stuff was, but on my own, because at the labs, we had way before Windows, but we had the multi-Windows type thing. You see, it's standard nowadays. Mm-hmm. We had that running on custom hardware at the labs, and Bill Sherman, a good friend of mine, was an author, a big part of that. And I said, man, I'd really like to do this at home so I could work with multiple Windows at home. And this is when state-of-the-art was like 2400 baud modem. But I wanted 3 editors open and applications open at the same time. So I went and talked to the guys at Murray Hill that did it, and they said you couldn't do that on a PC. So what did I do? I did it. Took a lot of assembly language work, but I said I can get this to work fast enough on a PC. We had I had hundreds of customers after put it out within the labs. And that was really fun. It was fun to have. In fact, I even took it to, I think his name was Mike DeFazio, the head of my lab at the time, and said, we should turn this to a commercial product. But then the marketing people came back, there's not a big enough market for this windowing system. It's crazy. Yeah. Yes, I stayed there about 2 years. I had a lot of good friends from there. I did tons of fun. At the end of the 2 years, it's an interesting story with Mary. When Mary and I were married, she said, I don't really want any children. She said, has a couple degrees, computer science and electrical engineering. Wanted to be a working person. Mm-hmm. So when we moved to New Jersey, she was a working person, and she learned what it's like to travel. And she learned that it's not glamorous when you do that. But she did really, really well. It was a startup company called Zycad. Did extremely well. After 2 years, she said, I'd kind of like to have a family. So I called a friend of mine that was running the company that came out of graduate school, John McAllister, and said, hey, John, I'd like a job. He said, when do you want to start? So I went in back. We moved back to the Midwest. And probably one of the most pivotal parts of our life. Now, working with John, John's a good friend of mine to this day. He lives out in Idaho now. But it was pivotal for a reason you wouldn't think. The work was great. I work with still in graphics. We had covers on science and stuff. It was fun. It was heady. It's not that I was all that good, but not many people were doing it. It's a lot easier to be great. I can remember my first ACM SIGGRAPH conference. I think there were 40 of us there for it. It's because there weren't that many people doing it in the world. But the pivotal thing actually wasn't work related at all. Mary and I, we moved to St. Louis. I loved the job. Within a period of 1 month, we bought a house. Learned that we were having our first child, Rebecca, and Mary was laid off from her job. Because she was not in a good location in St. Louis. So we went from way more income than we needed to support ourselves to income that wouldn't cover cash flow problems. In 1 month's time. And that was pivotal for our life because we went on a rice and beans type, we're going to get out of this debt type thing. Yeah. That nowadays you think about Dave Ramsey usually that does that. It was Larry Burkett at that point in time, a different guy. And we did that and paid off the house and everything in I think 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And I must say, God always provided for us. I can remember. I remember one time we were having our third child. I think that was when Hannah was born. I think we needed a minivan. I didn't really have the cash to buy it. I didn't want to borrow money to buy it. And I had a check show up in my mailbox for the price of a minivan. Turns out it was part of a bonus program I didn't know about in my current employer.
Wow.
And we've had things like that happen a lot. It's in life that God's always provided for us in that respect. Yeah. That's sort of that part of the life. We lived in St. Louis in a typical neighborhood for a lot of years.
Did you have all 6 kids in St. Louis?
We had 4 of them in St. Louis. Yeah, we stayed in St. Louis for, I think we're in that maybe 10 years or so. My wife's a saint because I traveled a lot with my job. Because you imagine pharmaceutical, a lot in Europe, a lot in Jersey.
Yeah.
Stuff, a lot on the West Coast type bit, the biochemical stuff. Yeah, that we did that for about 10 years or so. Then we decided we'd like to try living in a rural area. And we had only one really rural. We wouldn't pay any more for our rural place than we could sell our house in St. Louis area. And Mary doesn't like hills. Right? So we bought a gentleman's farm. We sold our house in St. Louis like $150, and it was $149. So,
what do you call it? Gentleman's farm.
Gentleman's farm. I mean, there's plenty of land, which we did raise animals, to grow stuff. You're not going to grow crops because it's not big enough. Yeah. But I was able to raise animals with the kids, and we had a nice big lake so we could fish, and kids could build massive tree houses in the woods.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a great place to raise the kids.
Yeah,
because you could go outside and leave them alone all day. You don't have to worry about them. There was nowhere to go.
One thing I think of with you, I mean, you have, I know your family. And so, like, I know 'em somewhat, right? Like, and I, like, at least, what, 4 of your kids? And they're, like, great adults now.
Oh, we did
right?
we did something different. This is weird. We early on, or when Rebecca, our oldest, got time for school, Mary said, she's still taking naps in the afternoon. I think I'm going to try to teach her at home the first year. So now, that was the time where if you taught your kids at home, you'd have people look at you like you're a criminal. They might ask you, is that really legal to do? Well, that turned into a 20-year experiment where we taught all of the kids at home, usually up until high school. We did that, and massive benefits to it. You're studying marine biology. Well, you hop on a plane and you go to the coast and go to SeaWorld and look at sea biology stuff. Or you're doing American colonialism, look at the Jamestown settlement kind of stuff. It was fantastic for that. What we learned from it, it's a couple principles we had with it, is we didn't want the kids to compete with each other, and we want them to have time to spend on what they like doing. If they're really, really good at math and they need 10 minutes a day, that's okay. And we did that, and what I learned from that is, well, it was very interesting because you couldn't even buy curriculum at first because companies that make curriculum wouldn't sell it to you because the school system said don't.
Yeah, of course.
It's a totally different world now. But what we discovered from parenting in that is what I would encourage anyone that has an inkling to try it. The thing you hear about someone that doesn't know anything about homeschooling is, well, your kids aren't going to be bad, so they're going to have socialization problems. I've heard
that was going to be my question about them going into high school. Was there any downfall?
There is one. The socialization, not. Because my kids growing up would socialize with old people because we would visit nursing homes to let them make friends there. They would do group things with other families. My kids, when they were 14, could easily talk to an adult of any age and a child. In fact, a lot of the socialization problems you have by being surrounded by your peers 8 hours a day, every day, you don't get.
Yeah.
Now, they're bad homeschoolers, but in general, socialization's not the problem. But I did see one thing that was consistent for every child. When they entered high school, they weren't used to being competitive academically.
Yeah, because they were going like pretty much at their own pace.
Yeah. They go at their own pace, and the people that they come in doing real well. The kids did, but that other people care an awful lot about where you are ranked. That took a semester for all of them. Then they got used to it. But that was the really only trouble moving into high school. They did the sports stuff. I had runners and soccer players and stuff. Some that were. I have all the different gamuts of kids in high school. But I will say, they pretty much all knocked that out of the park in high school. And the interesting thing we'd never had problems with kids studying and doing having trouble getting them to study. Because by the time they were used to, they could learn themselves. They didn't need us to learn. And generally, the high school years were actually pretty easy. I had the normal teenager boys things that parents have, but it was really good. Yeah, they turned out so cool because I like to brag on my kids. My baby right now is a civil engineer managing stuff up in Lexington. He's got an MBA and a civil engineering degree. My baby, second baby girl, Sarah, is she hasn't taken the degree yet, but she'll be a PhD in chemical engineering. In fact, she just got a cover of some research journal in Europe with her patent, which is really cool. Yeah, Sarah's really, really smart. Married to Grant, a brilliant electrical engineer. You'd like him. He's an inventor. Dave, you'd like him. Yeah, then I have Josiah. And Josiah's a PhD in chemical engineering. Works for a research company in Connecticut.
Nice.
Then we have Caleb, who is the best computers. I shouldn't say the best. He's one of the best computer science people I ever work with. He is really
so smart.
He's scary smart with this stuff. They got my eldest daughter Rebecca, who's rushed to get out of college, And interesting story. Well, she's in sales now. Or she's actually in customer success. Is really good at. Then I have, who did I miss? I missed
Drew's wife.
Yes, Hannah. Oh man, Hannah's the boss.
Yeah.
Hannah's the boss. Yeah, Hannah has I think her master's degree in nursing, and she said, "I want to raise my children." So she homeschools her kids now. Yeah, she's the boss still in the family though.
Yeah.
Hannah, totally. Yeah.
So, I mean, like when I think of success, right? Like first thought is like how most people do. I think of, oh, they've like been successful in business or some enterprise. But like, honestly, like, I love how, I mean, you truly think of success with like your family, your kids, like with relationships.
Family with my family. Well, it's one thing about the child stuff. I tell young parents, I've told you this, I know, you're not raising children. You're raising adults. And like any plan, you better have a plan for that. It'll take Shepard now. When he gets to be 8, you need to know what you want from them, and all the way up. Because I've seen this happen so many times. That's why you see so many 24, 30, 35-year-old children nowadays. Our goal with our kids was by the time they left home to go to college, they could function just fine without us. Now, they might need more education because of our society, but in terms of adult making decisions, they don't need us. And
do you find that, the homeschooling contributed to that mentality where they were able to function on their own by the time, like you said, they were 18, 19?
I think, but I don't think it's necessary. It was, part of it was we spent so much time with our kids. We knew them real well.
Yeah, and that's where I was getting at. I mean, they were home, all the way up until high school. So you guys got to spend a lot more time with your kids than people that would send them, 8 hours a day to public school.
But parents, unless you're like a single mom, you have plenty of time to spend with your kids. It just parents choose not to.
That's true too.
Yeah, there's plenty of time. There's just some basic things that helped. It's like for example, some parents give kids allowances. Our kids never had an allowance. When you were younger, everyone had assigned chores for the week that had to be finished by noon on Saturday. If you're 5 years old, it might be emptied in a few trash cans, but you had assigned chores. And if you did them, you were paid. If you didn't do them, any of your brothers or sisters had the choice to do them instead, and you paid them.
So you taught them work ethic at a very young age.
Similarly, once you turned 16, you had some options when you were 16 in the summertime. You could go look for a job and get a job, or you can stay at home and I would give you work and you wouldn't get paid. Little things like that. You want a car.
Did any of them choose to stay home and not get paid?
No. Yep. My work was hard. My work was hard. Yeah. We have the bluebirds. You can go weed them today. Have fun. Yeah. No, because all of them went out, and literally, I can remember Caleb took them up to town, drop you off, go find a job. And I wanted to learn that skill when they were young.
I have to think and I know you said it, you don't think it has any
homeschool has helped.
Yeah, because I have to think, especially in thinking nowadays, and I have 3 children as well. Well, they're not kids anymore. It's 22, 18, and 13. It's sending them off to school now. You're at home with your values, your beliefs, which you instill into your children, and then you send them off to a place that might be teaching against your values and beliefs. And so there's that battle all the time where they come back eventually and they're, getting different information, and so you have to constantly instill them like, no, this is what we believe. That's not right.
I didn't do that so much. A good example is science, because that's where you hit a lot of issues later. I spent a lot of time teaching my kids science. And a lot of science today is treated like religion.
Yep.
Yeah. And I just taught them, I taught them about the different origin stories, things that would cause some doubt to them, independent whether what your religion was. I tried to teach them to be a scientist like a Renaissance scientist. You're actually interested in what might be true, and what you believe might not be true tomorrow because you discover new evidence.
Yeah.
And our objective was to teach them to make their own decision up, but also to be respectful. If you have to sit under someone that has some scientific religion, well, study it, pass the test.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to earn a certificate in order to get to the next level.
Exactly. And that's what, my daughter right now she's in her freshman year of Jacksonville University. And I think the first month she called and there was a professor there that was completely going against everything, which will happen, which, how she was raised around us. And she was frustrated. She called us and I told her the exact same thing. I'm like, listen, just get through the class. You do not have to believe everything everybody teaches you, but get that certificate and that way you can move on. Yeah.
And it's hard as a parent. It's never to stop learning yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like a book that I recommended to a friend of mine recently it's by Michael Behe called Darwin's Black Box. Now Behe is a agnostic Jewish biochemist. Okay, and he wrote a book about some basic processes that says, I don't see how an evolutionary theory could ever cause this to happen. And he's not trying to say anything's right. He says the data just wouldn't, current models wouldn't support what we see. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things like that they'll say what science often takes as dogmatic. It fits some of the data, but it doesn't fit all of the data. And that's the hardest thing in our society is you're expected to take a position.
Yeah.
A lot of things in science, taking positions is dangerous because then you won't change when new data comes up. A lot of times, so.
Yeah. So, man, there's so many questions I could ask you. But going along with your story, you guys have 4 of them when you're up there in the Midwest, and did you have the other 2 when you moved down here?
No, we moved about 60 miles in the Midwest.
Okay,
and we had 2 more children while we lived there.
Okay,
we spent most of our time there, except we spent 6 or 8 months in Britain. Because I had we did a startup, John and company. We bought a little company in Cornwall, in the UK. That was it was 6 people in a auto garage that did pretty interesting chemistry. We bought them, built them into a $90 million business, and then saw it fail. But I used to go out there for 2 weeks at a time, every 4 to 6 weeks. It was so funny when I showed up at the first time. John told me it was in a garage, but I didn't kind of believe him. And I said, well, where's my desk so I can help on this? He said, well, there's some cinder blocks over there, so I put some cinder blocks on a piece of plywood. And that was my desk. But it was a fun ride because it was an area of there used to be an assumption that if you made enough chemicals, you'll discover something. So we were at one point in time we're making the most unique chemicals of any company in the world. It's all with robotics and stuff. It was pretty heady stuff. It was fun. It was a really fun time. We were doing some really interesting things. The big guys would come in and ask us how we did this because we were handling volumes. I think one year we made 400,000 chemicals no one's ever made before.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun and all done with robotics.
Wow. It's incredible. And it grew it into a $90 million business.
Yeah, it was. And then it was basically beaten by Eastern Europe. They could do it by hand, cheaper, because we were fully automated, but our cost per milligram we couldn't compete.
Yeah.
And the process didn't work. The idea was, say, you want to explore a chemical space like these 2 tables. Well, make chemicals evenly spaced on this tabletop because there's a gazillion of them you could make. But if you could use metrics to kind of evenly space them out, you could search the chemical space, maybe making 100,000 new chemicals as opposed to making the trillions that are in there. And it worked okay. But, a lot of chemical research stuff's like that. It kind of works okay.
Yeah. And then they're writing the software for this stuff.
Yeah, we wrote the software for it. My role was...
See, that's a whole other level of development and program. Like when you're taking physics or chemistry or stuff like that, and then you're developing for it because you're adding. I mean, you're taking 2 huge fields.
I work with real smart people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds
It's
like
something
it.
else.
I'm completely lost on this whole like conversation. This is like completely out of my realm, but it's very interesting.
But it was fun. It was
yeah.
fun. Yeah, it was fun. Living there with the kids was a ton of fun. They have a grandmother that lives in the. Well, she's I haven't seen her in a while, but that made a lot of good friends. Went to a wonderful church there, Flexbury. I still go there. I never go there anymore. Mary's been on to me to go spend a week there so we can go to my favorite pub and stuff like that.
Yeah. So then, when did y'all move to Santa Rosa Beach area? How old were they?
That's an interesting story. That we moved there, I think it's 5 years ago.
Okay.
And
you had already started Capstorm by then?
Yeah, Capstorm was started probably, the original stuff was
2010?
I was a CTO, and I did CIO stuff for a while for a company. I didn't really get enough time to write computer programs. Mm-hmm. And one job I had was back when Salesforce was small. Mm-hmm. We bought a company that used Salesforce, and we needed to merge Salesforces, and there wasn't any software to help. And my boss asked me if I'd do that for us, and I said, I'll try it. And I got to be CIO for a while too then. I was always a researcher at heart. Mm-hmm. I did that, and at the end, I asked him, can I have this software for this? I want all the IP for the stuff I wrote to make this merger happen. Mm-hmm. He said, sure. It has nothing to do with analytical chemistry.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with our business. So I took it as an open source thing, because it was interesting to me. And I did that for a few years. In fact, I remember it was the year I took it off open source was the year Noah went to middle school. Because he didn't go all the way to high school. Because mom with a 14-year-old one-on-one often doesn't work out. Yeah, there's too much conflict. But Noah's a great kid. But he said, and Mary said, I want to go to work. I said, okay, what would you like to do? He said, well, I think I want to be a librarian. I said, okay, I got another option for you. How about starting an enterprise software company? Yeah. He says, I don't know anything about sales or companies. I don't either. So they said, give me 6 months, and I'll give you something you could sell. So for the next 6 months, from 5 a.m. to 11 on Saturdays, I took my open source work, put together to be suitable for selling. And then I think it was in like October or November of 2011, I think, something like that. We put it on, it's called the App Exchange with Salesforce. And going forward, the only time we ever lost money was that first 3 months. Every year since then, it's been profitable. Mm-hmm. First customer was in Dubai, and now we have them all over the world. Most of them, I can't tell you who they are because we're very strict about legal agreements with agreements. But yeah, you open your medicine cabinet and stuff. We have all those people as our customers at home.
It's incredible. Bootstrapped it from literally your house. And you guys, y'all didn't get outside investments. You didn't get VC firms. You didn't go into debt. You didn't try and do the Silicon Valley.
Well, I can tell you for the technical side of it, after working with proteins and stuff for 20 years, the problems weren't that hard. They're computer science stuff, but they're not that hard. Yeah, Mary and I actually did it as a hobby for 7 or 8 years. We did it as a hobby because we did it as a hobby until 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
About 4 years ago. It was just a hobby. It is making fantastic income. We had customers all over the place and stuff. But it was just a hobby because I am passionate. I'm one of the world's laziest computer programmers. So if someone has a problem with software I wrote, I'll do whatever it takes so I'll never get asked that question again. Yeah, because I like having free time, and the only way you can have a lot of free time is have software that's real easy to support.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about that. We did that in about, what was it?
About 4 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago, my daughter, Rebecca, she had been working in apartment complex rescue. If you were having cash flow problems at your apartment complex, she would show up, she would hire, and get you cash flow positive. Mm-hmm. Then she'd move on, what she did. Well, she and Nick were pregnant with their first child, and she said, I really don't want to do this because I have to travel and stuff. And I talked to her, said, how'd you like to try enterprise software sales? He said, sure, why not? So that was our first employee.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and she did really well. Yeah, she did really well. She's well known in the industry now. And what was it? Maybe a year after that, I was talking with Drew, who's my son-in-law. He's trained as a speech pathologist, got his master's. One thing they don't tell you when you're doing that is what your income potential is like. And he wanted Hannah to have the freedom of being able to stay home with kids if she wanted to. Harder to do that with that field. So we were walking in the woods one afternoon behind my house, and I had learned Drew really well. Lots of stories from him. But I knew he comes from a dairy farm, strong work ethic. I said, hey, Drew, have you ever thought about enterprise software sales? Now, see, the only downside, I need you to move to Florida if you want to do that. He talked to Hannah, and they came down. He runs sales now. He's still learning. He's really good at it, though.
Yeah.
Runs a sales team now. And similarly, for when Becca and Drew started with us, I called Caleb. Now, Caleb, I in my heart, I wanted to hire him after he finished school. But as a father, I couldn't do that because you need to get there and make it on your own. And Caleb did really well.
Yeah.
Really, really well. Interesting startup that it would have done really, really well if they had some decent management. That's another story. But I called Caleb and said, Caleb, Caleb and I had worked together for 2.5 years because I hired him as an intern, and it worked out so well that kept him on during school for 20 hours a week. We were doing some work with another fella in genetic algorithms. It's state of the art in pharmaceutical right now. The product is stuff we worked on, and I learned that he was really, really good as far as that. And he said, "Sure, I'd like to try." I said, "I'll give you some equity. Come down." So it was. We built a house down here, and 5 years ago, it was Becca, Caleb, my wife, Drew, and Becca. That was the company.
Yeah,
you had your team,
and we worked in the upstairs of my house. I loved it because for lunch I could go down to the kitchen and make a sandwich. In the afternoon, I can go in the backyard in the pool and go swimming. Caleb and I are tired. We could walk to the beach and have a beer in the afternoon. It was really, really nice. Well, we did that for almost 3 years. And this is where the story changes. We're making tons of money doing it, but I was a bit convicted in prayer that God has given us this great gift, and we're using it just as our playground. And it also, I have 3 people that depend on this for mortgages and stuff now. So that point we decided we need to bring some professional management in here. Because up to this point, we hadn't had a marketing function, for example. We did it mostly word of mouth. There's some shows we went to, but mostly it was referrals, and it's on our website type thing. So we went out to a professional recruiter and paid the bucks to get someone that's had some experience doing it. The first guy didn't work out too well. But the guy we have now, Ted, is really, really good. And since then, we have some of the best marketing people I've ever worked with. For example, some of the best, good, strong tech people. Sales team has really knocked that out of the park last year. So now it's kind of a company, and they put me out to pasture, so I get
to you get to chill.
Yeah, the thing is, part of this is money's nice, but I care more about the people in the company that has helped us succeeding.
Yeah, as you should.
It's not just my kids. It's like Ted this is his first job as solo CEO. Have a good mentor that helps him out, a part-time CFO. Big deal for him, really big deal. Our finance guy, same thing, big deal for him. He's doing stuff you do not do when you're 3 years out of school. As you can imagine, people are trying to buy into us or buy us all the time as far as that goes. But and even at the company, I'm passionate about helping other people succeed. Type it. I'm not going to eat any better. We'll exit this at some point, but I'm not going to eat any better. So,
yeah.
But other people, sometimes the way I express it, I'm interested in what's going to happen. Well, how may actions affect 100 years from now? Not so much this next quarter, next year. I want to have
a legacy.
I want a big impact. I don't care if people remember me. I'll just be compost anyway.
Yeah.
But I want the people I work with to have an effect. I want to have an effect 100 years from now. Sounds cheesy, but the truth.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's what I mean, I think my family, my family's tight knit, very strong Irish Catholic family, but that's sort of the mentality that we grew up with is like, hey, what you do is going to have an effect on this family for years to come, and that's what you try to strive for is, and then the best way to do that is by helping others. Yeah. You get to a point of success and you're like, okay, I've made it. I don't need anything else.
But don't wait till you get to success. You start it early. You got to develop the habit early or you won't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. But I think you can really start affecting other people when you are successful, because then you can, like you said, sort of sit back and then really take care of the individuals.
I'd actually
that are
challenge
working for
you. I would challenge you. When I had almost no money, I could still affect people because I always had the same amount of time as everybody else. I could have breakfast with somebody. I can listen to somebody. I can listen to someone talk about raising their kids when I learned a little bit about that. Yeah, I think it's actually it's called, what's it called? The fallacy of the heroic. It's something we have to avoid. The fallacy of the heroic says, when I get to here, I'm going to do great things. When I make enough money, I'm going to do great things. When I'm not working full time, I'm going to go help this charity out. Trouble is, it doesn't happen. The heroic starts today. It doesn't start in the future.
I've struggled with that some of where I think but I know better, right? In my head, I know better. I'll go, okay, like if you're not giving now, you're not going to be giving at this certain point in the future, or if you're not saving now, you're not going to be saving at this certain point in the future or whatever.
And with your kids, if you're not spending time with your kids now, doing fun things with them, you won't have the opportunity later.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
So like when you went from, I love the business side of it. Like when you went from going from bootstrap, one thing, having a software program, just from the software side of it, having something you've built for someone specific, and then taking that and turning that into a product that's on the market, that's for lots of different customers. That's a different thing right there. Like just building something for someone specific and then taking it to market. But then from you guys of like going, okay, we have no debt. We're in positive and growing. And when you got that conviction and then you really brought in people and brought in a team and brought in a CEO and really replaced yourself, that's a whole other transition right there. What was that like?
It's fine now. How about that? It's fine now. I'll tell you, when we first tried it, advice I would give to somebody else, I trusted the executive we hired too much. Because some of the decisions were against my better judgment. But I say, hey, I hired you because you know this stuff. I don't. I would say that was a difficult part. Don't discount what you've learned. I'm not. I might have been in the C-suite for a long time, but I was a technology person. I'm a researcher. It doesn't matter what my title is. I'm a researcher as far as that goes. But you learn stuff from friends, and don't discount. Just because you haven't held the CEO role before, don't think you know nothing about it.
And it's your baby.
I've never felt that way. It's the business to us is a gift. I've worked with some really, really smart people. I know any of a dozen people that could have done what we've done from a technical standpoint. It's a gift. You don't grow like we did by not doing marketing, not doing outbound calling, no cold calls, almost no marketing, a website that you built yourself type bit. It's a gift. It's a gift from God as far as that goes. And I remind just last week we had our kickoff meeting in Atlanta. I still try to remind people of that. This is a stewardship thing. And my CEO likes to say, no, it's about ARR. I said, yeah, you're right. If the ARR goes to the toilet, you're probably going to get fired, but that's a different story.
Annual reoccurring revenue.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, software is the best because our software is what we sell. It's actually a really simple problem we solve. In one sense is here's Salesforce over here. You'd like a copy of your Salesforce that is near real time in a database where you can do massively nasty things that you can't do in Salesforce. And that's really the problem because we go both directions and stuff. But it's hard to do that well. It's way hard to do it well. But the problem we solve is not very hard to understand. Yeah.
There's few times, like a lot of tech guys that I talk, most tech people like that are really good at development. They're not very good with thinking entrepreneurially or vice versa. Entrepreneurially, but they're just like kind of programmers.
Yeah.
And they understand enough buzzwords, but they don't really understand development or design patterns or any of that.
Yeah.
But like you're one of the few guys that I talk to that I'm like, he gets both. Like that you kind of have both those brains that you think that you think simplistically, that you think of solving problems.
If it's not simple, I don't understand it. And sometimes it takes a long time to make something. Making things simple is really, really hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like I'll say our thing, copy stuff from Salesforce over here. Well, if I can't explain it to my wife, she's smart, but she's not a programmer type. I don't understand it very well if I can't explain it to her. Mm-hmm. Now, I can go inside and say, there's about 100 processes that run and do dynamic communication. It's basically a basic operating system. It's, inside, it's nasty. But from the outside, if I can't explain it to someone who's non-technical, I probably don't understand it very well.
Yeah. And it solves a problem that the market needs, like a simple problem that the market needs. That's how it came about. You solved a problem for your company.
Yeah.
And then you took it, and then now you're solving it for other companies.
That's
right?
it. Yeah. And I hate writing stuff people won't buy, because the metric of whether what you do is any good is someone will give you money for it.
Oh.
So
True.
Sometimes I'll say, I'm actually thinking of someone we both know. Business dreams are a dime a dozen. I know lots of people have business dreams. It's a ton of work to take a dream into a business. And one metric, if you were successful going from your dream to your business, if someone will shell over money for it. I can sit around with a beer and talk business dreams with someone all day long.
Yeah.
And building a business plan and executing is a different story.
Yeah, 100%. How many conversations you have throughout the week? Someone's like, hey, I got a mobile app idea, or I got this business, and you realize pretty quickly they want to talk about it. They don't want to talk through it.
They don't have a plan.
Bingo. Like it's not actually going to come to fruition. They just want to dream about it, but they're not like talking. There's a difference because you'll talk through it because you're trying to figure out how you make this actually happen versus like talking about it. And most people, it's talking about it in just a generic sense. They're not talking through it to go, hey, how do I really execute this?
Oh, we had some great help. We had Drew. You know Peter Coffey? Do you know him?
That sounds familiar.
He's been forever. He was a columnist on PC World for ages. He's a luminary type thinker. He works. He's one of the execs at Salesforce now. But Drew has got a pretty good relationship with him, and Peter's been helping us, even with us doing this for 10 years, teaching us that how we describe what we do to other people is not so good. He's helped us with that because if you can't get into them, let me back up a little bit. What I tell our new salespeople we sell is career advancement. We tell people advance their careers. And when you talk to a prospect on the phone, find out what they need to advance their career. Because in the end, they'll want to buy that. And we have software that does stuff, but I have a friend now that one of the big pharmaceutical part of big multinational you would know. He's went up the ladder like crazy. We helped him a lot because we helped his career early. And does that pay dividends? It's paid us millions in dividends because you helped him.
Yeah.
And that's a question our salespeople tend to think about. I got to meet my target with the quote. I think that's the wrong thing.
Like you said, that's the stewardship mindset, right? Yeah. I mean, which is what you said. Your executive is like, no, we're worried about this. But I think both those things are conjoined. Like, if you have the stewardship mindset, then this will grow as well.
I get it I've been helped by so many people. The friend of mine, Ward Davidson, he was head of sales at a company I worked at years ago. Ward ran Digital Equipment. You guys are old enough to even remember them. They were the big scientific computing company for a long time, the Digital Equipment Corporation. I think Sun bought them eventually. But he told me he doesn't sell stuff. He ran sales for us, this other company. He says, I don't sell people because people don't like being sold. What I do is find buyers and then help them buy. And it's easier to find a buyer if you have something that people want.
Yeah.
Rather than no one likes being. That's like who likes to go buy a car?
No.
It's a terrible
No.
experience because you have someone that's trying to sell you on something. They don't really care what you want.
Yeah, they're trying to meet their quota.
Meet their quota. And the great ones, though, don't sell that way. The great ones don't. And we try with our salespeople and a lot of our staff to think about that. We're out here to help people advance their careers in the marketplace. And if the best thing you could do for someone you're on the phone with is have them go to one of our competitors, recommend one of our competitors to them. Because someone will remember that. Because you're going to be the right thing one of these times.
Yeah.
That's being authentic as well. And they're like, okay, this person's not just out for himself. Like he's like, okay, well, like you said, you could recommend a competitor. That would go a long way. Yeah. If I was on the line with somebody, I'd be like, oh, all right, this is a genuine individual that's literally wanting to help me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking after it sort of goes back to the scripture, love your neighbor as yourself. To love your neighbor as yourself, you have to know what your neighbor wants and needs. Might not be the same as you. But if you can get into that mindset, and I do it with our business. We're into business to help other people's careers. Now, it has to be profitable because we have to make payroll and all that bit. But in the end, if I was in a business that didn't help other people succeed, I don't think I would want to be in it. I might do it because I have to, because I need it to support my family, but I wouldn't really be interested in being in a business that didn't help other people.
Yeah, so you're fulfilled by helping people.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down
And
to.
it came from my pharmaceutical days. I loved working in pharma because I can remember some work I worked with Jorgen Brickman. I think he's deceased now, but he was outside Frankfurt. We worked on beautiful visualizations of molecules, but the idea was to find a better way to develop a pharmaceutical for a molecule by using graphics and stuff. And I'm not responsible for any of this, but I've been fortunate to be parts of teams that were instrumental in beta blockers. So if you go and have a heart attack and they pump a beta blocker into you, well, I know people we're working with came up with some of the no one person does any of this because pharmaceuticals are hard to do. But I worked on a number of things like that where it was cool because I had one colleague whose wife had multiple sclerosis. We did some work that helped with that. So, it's a piece of the research that came up with new treatments for it. That's really fulfilling.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome.
We're doing, even in the business now, we're working with one company in their oncology area that they've used our stuff to get their data in a form that's much more amenable for analysis. So in a real sense, we're helping cancer research in this company. That feels good. That feels good.
Yeah.
So when you went from rice and beans to multi-millions, I feel like your perspective in life hasn't changed a ton in there. Like money didn't really affect you.
Yeah, about it.
Would you say that's right?
What Mary and I do anything we want. Okay, pretty much. What we spend on doing stuff hasn't really changed in the past 10 years. It's what we like. We were able to do what we want. We can do cool things. Like a couple weeks ago, we decided on Monday, let's go to Cancun for a week. Okay. Well, we probably wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. But that's an isolated thing. If I look at things like cash flow and stuff for the year, we don't spend hardly any more money than we did 10 years ago a year. It's what I like to do, and we like to walk. I like to play guitars. So something I learned real early is there's a high cost to owning stuff. And anytime you buy something, it takes some of your time. And you can buy so many things that it takes all of your time. So I'm very careful about buying something because it takes maintenance costs.
Yeah.
Almost anything you buy is like money's like that. Money takes you accumulate more money. There's maintenance costs to that.
Yeah. You ever buy a boat?
No money, no problem.
Is that the hole in the water you pour money into?
What's the deal? Like the best 2 days of a boat owner's life, like the day they buy it, the day they sell it. It's like,
and boats are fine things if that's really what you're into and you really enjoy it as a time. but be very careful what you buy, because what you buy has a tendency to own you if you're not careful.
Well, yeah, I would think, and I try to do that too. Like if I'm going to make a big purchase, it's got to be something that I already know I'm going to invest my time in. Like yes, I want this and I want to invest my time in this, but there's so many options out there now. You could buy whatever, and I have found that as well. Like you make purchases and then maybe it's something you really didn't want or you just wanted at the time.
Yeah.
And then, but guess what? You have it in your house and now you can either spend the time trying to, operate that purchase or trying to figure it out, or you just wasted however much money.
Yeah.
He's talking about a cold plunge, by the way.
That's coming.
Well,
I plan on investing a lot of time into that. Yeah.
I'll tell you something I found is I love to invest money on, and that's an experience. Experience for me or experiences for other people. I told you before the thing, I love my bows. I think I spent 6 months before I would buy them. I got $300. They're not that expensive, but I will think a lot. Oh man, a good story this last year. I used to own a Seagull guitar, the Canadian company. That's I think they make things that play as good as the best Martins, not nearly as expensive. I think I spent 9 months. How can I spend $1,200 on this guitar? And Mary finally said, "Tell me what guitar you want." And she ordered it and it showed up. Just tired of me talking about it. But the dropping money on experiences with people or giving money to people to help them have experiences. Like Mary and I do a lot with, in the U.S., outside the U.S., we do a lot with Compassion International. I've had a lot of kids over the years.
What is that?
It's a group that goes into impoverished countries and establishes schools, makes sure people get trained, that they have food to eat.
Oh, really cool.
Type thing. And
They're huge.
they're huge. Yeah. They're huge. And we got to really, we pick carefully on kids we sponsor. I have kids usually when I pick a kid, I'll sponsor them for usually about 10 years. Because they're usually in 4 or 5 year range, try to get them through school, fund them through a trade school so they learn to do something. Then unfortunately, once they get to be adults, I generally have to lose contact with them.
Really?
Yeah, because it's dangerous for the child. If they have a wealthy American friend.
Okay,
it's
yeah.
dangerous
Depending on what part of the country they're from.
So a lot of these countries, it's not safe for them.
So how do you, when you're helping these children, how do you keep track of them and their progress?
I write them, and we exchange letters.
Okay.
Yeah, for years at a time. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. And in the United States, we do a lot of different stuff. But we have particular compassion toward young women, especially single young women, women have a pregnancy they didn't plan on, kind of stuff. Work with that because we are total lovers of children, and it's sort of, I'll tell you a personal thing. I am probably, I'm good at talking about like pro-life kind of stuff, life stuff. I'll tell you why. When, after we had Becca and Caleb, we had a third child, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Ruth was before. Was Nathan or Ruth first? Anyway, I think it was, Ruth was the first. We had Ruth Ellen. And at about 2 months, we knew Ruth would not live to be born because she had a genetic defect that would cause heart, lung type development problems. And basically, you didn't make it out of the first trimester with this particular chromosomal defect. And the doctors recommended abortion. And we said, no, we don't make those kind of decisions for life. Mary's in the medical textbooks. She carried Ruth Ellen to term. Never had happened before. I got to hold her for about 10 minutes while she died. She couldn't live because her lungs and stuff wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I have stuff outside. But it's not my job to decide who lives and who dies in that. And they told us this is sort of a one-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. If you go to medical school, you'll read about her.
Wow.
She cared. Then we had Hannah Grace after that. And then we had another child, Nathan Gregory. Early on, he had a chromosomal defect. If you ever study how you get born, it's amazing anyone ever gets born as far as it goes. But same sort of thing. And they usually spontaneous abort in the first trimester. So Mary carried Nathan to almost full term. He died in utero toward the end, type bit. But same sort of thing. It's do I believe life is sanctified? You better believe I believe it.
Yeah.
And people will believe me because it's if they don't believe me, I'll take them to 2 graves, and I'll show you here's a couple alive, young lives that didn't live very long.
I don't get why people wouldn't believe that.
They will believe it. They believe my opinion. They'll listen to my opinion, what I think that I'm. It's the same sort of thing. I found this. I used to do Facebook kind of stuff, but I started thinking negatively of a lot of my friends just by seeing what they wrote.
Oh, social media will do that.
So I just dropped off. I don't do it anymore. But it's something I will ask. Someone has opinions on what we should do on children that don't need help and care. I ask, well, what are you doing? How many kids are you helping out? How many young moms are you helping out? And I say, I'll take a hard line. If the answer is 0, you haven't earned the right to have an opinion.
Yeah, because you haven't
your opinion doesn't matter.
The time and effort in.
Yeah.
How do you having that experience, especially with it was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was born and you had 10 minutes while they die. How do you you're one of the most faithful, I mean, you have such a great relationship with the Lord. Like how do you reconcile that? How'd you work through that?
I built a tremendous treehouse in our backyard. I mean, octagon with the hard angles. Honestly, we were able to minister to so many people, help people in the hospital. Because I knew going into it that Ruth would die. We could do drastic measures to keep her alive for a week or so, but she just didn't have the kit inside to live. God provided peace in that. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, and working through it, I'd say took me about a year. But I had no one to help me on that. In fact, it was nice. We had our pastor went through that. It was good to be able to talk with him because I knew what it's going to feel like for me because he had something like that happen a couple of years ago. I don't know. It was. I only remember it with joy. Actually, at this point in time, it matures into something. It was hard. The first year was hard for Mary too. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for a woman to come home from the hospital without a baby.
I can't imagine.
It's devastating. But it has matured over the past 20 years or so into something beautiful. 25 years. I don't remember any pain with it. All I do is look forward to seeing her someday.
Did you think okay, God, how come?
No, never asked the question because life is inherently dangerous. I know I live in a world that is under a curse, and there are bad things that happen. There's also tons of good things that happen too, but it's just a dangerous world. I could have an aneurysm while we're sitting here and die.
Please don't.
No, I won't. If you did, you'd probably watched more. Yeah, but life is inherently dangerous. It's inherently dangerous. We're all going to die, and you can live a lot better if you accept that.
Yeah, and accept the fact that there is good and that there is evil.
Yeah, there's both.
Yeah.
And I contribute to both.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
I think, it's hearing you talk about just overcoming that and then administering to others. I have a saying that I tell myself when I go through hard times or, this pain will serve you well someday.
It does.
That is the absolute truest thing I've ever been told and that I ever tell myself because you're always going to face hardships and that trauma, how big or how small, it's still trauma. And you as an individual can make that decision to either give up and be like, well, this is, a woe is me attitude and ask why God, why is this happening to me? Or you can push through that pain through faith and have trust in God that he will guide you through it no matter how hard it gets. And then when you're on the other side, it is on your shoulders to share your experiences to help others get through that.
Yeah. And it's hard to say in the midst. This is probably needed. God chose this for me. And that's the truth. Now, I can choose what I do with it.
Yep.
I can choose to let him care for me and teach me, or I certainly have met parents that were devastated 10 years later that never actually dealt with the fact that, yeah, your child died. It's happened sometimes. But the cool things, if you get through it, there are so many miscarriages and stuff that people just don't talk about.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to talk about it, people need someone to talk with them.
Everybody does.
Everybody does, and that happens a lot. It's happened in my family. But people don't talk about it.
I think that was. I mean, the way I grew up, and like I said, strong Irish Catholic family. You did not talk about emotions. You did not talk about your feelings. It was. I mean, it's just, and no fault on them. That's just the way it was.
No.
And you can see over time that causes even more trauma in the long run.
Yeah, my dad was kind of like that too, and one of the and what I'll say about that, I learned about my dad. My dad died a little over a year ago. Is don't judge a person if you don't know their past, because I learned about what his family life was like and his father was like. My dad was 1,000 times better than what he grew up with.
Yeah.
But I did make one of the commitments. When you take my father or your father, do you learn the good from them?
Yep.
And some things you need to say, this is going to change in my generation. In my generation, for example, my kids are going to get hugged and kissed.
I'm the same way. I hug and kiss my kids all the time, and that is, and I love my dad's, the same. I love him to death.
Yeah.
He is my hero. But even to this day, because of the way he was raised and brought up, like, it's still, I'll go to give him a hug and he stiffens up, and it's, he accepts it, but it's just, he has not crossed that boundary yet, or dealt with things himself to where he can get to that place where he can show, affection. But I know it's deep down.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'll take my dad. He could, anything that he could see, mechanical, he is 1,000 times better than I am dealing with it.
Yeah.
He could just fix stuff, and he would care for widows and stuff. I remember Arlene, for example. He'd take care. If he knew you had a need, you couldn't stop him from helping you. Yeah, but if you want emotion, well, good luck.
Yep. Same way. Yeah. My dad would take us out on, like, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We would buy however many $100 of groceries and go down to the impoverished neighborhoods and literally door to door, knock on the doors and give them turkeys, food. I mean, and me growing up as a little kid, I was like, what are we doing? But yeah, that's the kind of heart that he had.
Your dad loves. It's one of my favorite sayings. It's from a John Francisco song, but it's love is not a feeling; it's an act of the will.
I like that.
And some people have easier times expressing the feelings. It's like compassion. God had to teach me compassion. Do I have compassionate feelings? I don't think I do. I'm just not wired for it. Can I act compassionately? Yes.
Yep. That's true.
Oh, man, this is awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm glad to do it.
Dude, I feel like we'll need to have you on again and talk.
You know where I live.
I know where you live, and there's 1,000 things that we could dive into. But I think what I really like, especially, it's not just you starting a successful company and all that stuff. I think that's part of it. But really what I admire you and Mary also for is, I mean, you look at how the relationship you have with your kids, the relationship you have with your grandkids now.
Yeah.
Right. And y'all, it's like you have your life that you guys have gotten in order and done well. And then you have your kids and your immediate family that you've like really put most of your time. It's like you're lined up in priority wise really well. And then now you extend it out and you help all sorts of people, right? You guys have helped us.
I hope so.
You guys have helped us. You've changed how I view of raising my kids. Mine are 2, 4, 6, and 8. So like, yeah, and the things you've said, like, take it like a business problem. Look at you. What do you want as the outcome, and then work yourself backwards. Duh. But like, man, it's been super impactful. Where I'm going, okay, I'm implementing chore charts now and getting them, and next Christmas they're taking half their toys and we're going to go and give them away for Christmas and like stuff like that. Yeah. But also the saying, you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. Man, it's almost those little sayings like that give you like a framework to work through.
Yeah. And that's what are missing. So many parents don't have a framework.
Yeah. Well, and not even thinking about it. A lot of kids or young men my age, they're not thinking about they're thinking about golfing. They're thinking about doing all sorts of stuff, but they're not considering, hey, before I know it, my kids are going to be teenagers and then they're going to be young adults. And am I preparing them for life? Am I really building into them?
And last thing you want is not having a plan, because you might get lucky. You don't have a plan. You might get lucky. Mm-hmm. But the odds are you're going to have, my kid's been arrested or my daughter's pregnant. There's high cost to not planning. Not always. Sometimes it works out okay, but there's often, I've just seen it too often, there's a high cost. And it's easier, it's way cheaper. Like Becca tells me, her son Gabe our Nate is very much a defiant kid. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to deal with defiance at age 4, 5, and 6 than it is at 16, 17, and 18.
Oh, brother, you're preaching to the choir. I sincerely appreciate you coming on, and it was great hearing your story. But I really appreciate you imparting your wisdom, everything you've been through.
Say what I've been taught.
Yeah,
I've been taught.
I've taken a lot from it, and I know our listeners will as well.
Good.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Greg.
Hey, thanks. Ciao.
All right. Ciao. I like that. Ciao.
Renaissance man.
Renaissance man.